Manny has a phrase he lives by. Fuck it. You only live once. Now, he's been saying this before YOLO was a thing, before it was a hashtag. I'm talking 2008. This was the era where buying car parts online meant taking risks, trusting strangers, and sometimes dragging your homies into missions they definitely did not sign up for. And Manny was always down for a mission. Back then, if you wanted Honda parts, you didn't just click buy now. You refreshed Craigslist like it owed you money. You memorized phone numbers, you showed up late at night at sketchy spots with cash in your hand and hoped the situation turned out friendly. And his homeboy Frankie knows this all too well. So now it's 2008. Manny and Frankie are hunting down bumper corner lights for Frankie's 1996 Integra in Cypress Green Pearl. For anyone new to this, the Integra was Honda's slightly more grown-up cousin to the Civic. Same DNA, but sharper. And Frankie's was already sitting right. Mugen R&R wheels, Recaro seats, and an X-brace in the back. He was chasing that clean JDM front-end look. The kind you only saw in magazines or those little grainy photos in forums at the time. And Craigslist was where it was at for all the car parts. Before Facebook Marketplace, before OfferUp, Craigslist was the digital penny saver, where you could find anything from car parts, furniture, and things you absolutely did not want to click on at work. So Manny and Frankie pull up to a duplex in Lincoln Heights. At the time, this wasn't exactly the neighborhood you wanted to hang out in, but they meet the seller who signals them to come around the back. And then suddenly, the guy disappears. No explanation, nothing. He's just gone. So Frankie and Manny look at each other. Meanwhile, Frankie's girlfriend at the time is in the car with the engine running and eyes forward, ready to bounce if anything goes sideways. Because you never really knew how these things were going to go. And then suddenly, the seller pops out of a hole in the ground. Yeah, literally. Holding amber JDM corner lights like he just dug them out of buried treasure. And then he still casually asks, you guys need anything else? Mirrors, clusters, seat. The whole situation was unexpected, but also a successful transaction somehow. Cash gets handed over, no drama, no problems. They get back in the car and leave like right away. Today, buying car parts online doesn't really feel like that anymore. You can see seller ratings, you can scroll through their other listings, and you can have back and forth messaging before you even leave your house. But back then, the thrill was part of it. The late nights, the constant refreshing, hoping you'd beat someone else to those parts that would finally complete your build. And this wasn't even the first or last of crazy Craigslist situations for Manny. Not even close. To understand how he got here, you have to go back to the beginning. Before the builds, before the lowballing, before he started building his baddie Civic collection. Welcome to the Throttle Culture Podcast, a space where design, history, and emotion meet horsepower. We celebrate the stories behind the builds and the people who see more than just a car. They see a connection. This week, we're diving into the Civic and JDM scenes with Manny and his many Craigslist adventures. So let's get into it. It all started with the CRX. Manny still remembers the first time he rode in his friend Miguel's CRX SI in Barbados yellow. Paint code Y49. This was known as the Kerr CRX, sitting nicely on 5 Zegan wheels, loud, light, and raw. For those unfamiliar, the CRX was Honda's lightweight 2-seater hatchback from the late 80s and early 90s. Barely weighed over 2,000 pounds, double wishbone suspension front and rear, no frills, just a driver-focused car. Miguel's had VTEC. VTEC is Honda's way of giving the engine 2 personalities. At low RPMs, the engine runs calmly and efficiently. It uses smaller cam lobes that prioritize smooth driving, better fuel economy, and reliability. This is perfect for daily driving and cruising without drama. But then, once you hit a certain RPM, VTEC engages. Inside the engine, oil pressure activates a locking pin that switches the valve train to more aggressive cam profile. The valves open up farther and stay open longer. More air and fuel rush in. The engine wakes up. That's the moment people describe as VTEC kicking in. The sound changes, the pulls get stronger, and the engine suddenly wants to rev all the way up to redline. For drivers, it feels like a second wind, not a turbo surge, but a smooth mechanical transition from chill to full send. That's why VTEC became legendary. It lets small, naturally aspirated engines feel exciting without sacrificing reliability or daily usability. You could commute all week, then scream the motor on the weekend, and Honda designed it to handle both. In short, VTEC is efficiency when you need it and chaos when you want it. And when that hit, that was it for Manny. He didn't know all the technical terms yet, he just knew the way it felt. The sound, the way the engine begged to be revved. Something clicked in him, and he was done for. Around the same time, Manny was working weekends as a sign twirler. He was standing on the corner spinning arrows outside of a leasing office. Until one day, he sees a black Acura NSX roll by. He looks it up on Auto Trader and finds out it's selling for like 50 grand. So yeah, that dream wasn't happening for him at the time. So he aimed a little closer. At 17, Manny finds a white 1989 CRX listed on LA Oodle. This was another weird classified site from the era. The CRX was automatic. High mileage, broken axle, definitely not glamorous. But it was only $500. He'd been saving one Franklin $100 bill from every paycheck, folding that bill and just hiding it away. 6 months later, that car was his. The seller was a teacher, second owner, and he wanted it to go to a student. So you know what? That felt like it was meant to be. The first mod, a loud-ass eBay muffler, full-on fart can, which immediately got him pulled over constantly. Fix-it tickets, decibel tests, taking the exhaust off just to pass inspection. Then came the eBay coilovers, Altiza taillights, full Fast and Furious energy. Like a lot of people, Manny started out chasing noise and attention. But the deeper he got into Hondas, the more he learned OEM is where it's at. OEM parts, factory options, the stuff Honda engineered right the first time. And that's when the EF chassis hooked him. EF means late 80s, early 90s Civics and CRXs. Lightweight, no driver assist. He didn't even care about the new EGs, EKs, none of that. Then one day, a coworker pulls into the parking lot in a completely stock 1991 Civic Si hatchback. Clean paint, original interior, no cut springs, no hacked wiring. Manny asked to buy it over and over again for like a year until eventually his coworker gave in. He wanted $2,500. And the plan was always a B16 swap. The engine from the Japanese market Civic SIR. Because Manny was still chasing that feeling of Miguel's CRX, the stock drivetrain from the SI eventually went into the CRX, built piece by piece with junkyard parts. So at 19, Manny's working 2 full-time jobs, turning the SI into a full JDM EF9 style build. Mugen MR5 wheels, Skunk 2 suspension, SIR wing, EF9 interior pieces, parts that weren't easy to find even back then. But shout out Unicorn Tamer for coming through all the way from Ventura for some of those. One night, scrolling Craigslist at 11 p.m., Manny spots a CRX armrest. Rare. EF compatible. The seller says pickup has to happen before midnight. So he's got a little time. He wakes up his cousin and they drive an hour and a half south, hauling ass, cutting it so close. In the middle of the night, somewhere deep in Orange County, and Manny is coming all the way from Santa Clarita Valley. But they make it with just a few minutes to spare. And the transaction goes smooth. Relief sets in. Just another normal night in Manny's world. But one day, someone gets mad and rams their Dodge Ram into the rear quarter panel of Manny's SI. Metal's folded, wheels pushed in. The hatch is no longer sitting right. The car Manny has been building piece by piece, late nights and early mornings, suddenly sitting there wounded. And when the estimate came back, it wasn't even close to what he needed. Repairing the quarter properly meant serious bodywork. Cutting, welding, money Manny didn't even have at the time, especially for a car that at the time was still just an old Civic to everyone else. So he did the thing no one wants to do. He let it go. He sold the SI knowing exactly what it was worth to him and knowing he couldn't save it the way it deserved. Watching it leave was worse than the hit itself. Years of work, memories, and plans for what it was supposed to become gone in one decision. To this day, that 91 SI still sits heavy with him. Not because it was perfect, but because it was his, the clean one he chased for a year. The one that taught him patience, restraint, and what it feels like to lose a car before you're ready. But he's not done. He's ready to seek that thrill of spotting his dream Civic baddie again and making it his. But first, he needs a daily. So it was back to the drawing board. The white CRX was sitting there unfinished, still automatic, still waiting. No shortcuts left or a backup plan. If he wanted to keep moving forward, the conversion had to happen. Most nights, Manny and his cousin were posted up in front of a computer that sounded like it was on its last breath. Honda tech tabs stacked on top of each other, old CRX forums with gray backgrounds and tiny photos that took forever to load. Threads from 2003, 2001 even. From some guy who did the swap once and never came back to answer any questions. And they read through everything. Which pedals to grab, which mounts work, which years shared parts and which ones did not, and which mistakes would cost you a weekend or a whole engine. Screenshots got printed, notes got scribbled on loose paper. Arguments broke out over whether they needed the SI linkage or if the DX one could be modified. Someone online swore you could make it work, and someone else said don't even try. This was all before clean YouTube tutorials. No step-by-step reels, just trial and error, and strangers on the internet who might have been right or might have been wrong. They would hit pick your part early in the mornings, tools in backpacks, looking for pedal assemblies and shifter cables, like a scavenger hunt, crawling under sun-baked Civics and getting grease under their fingernails. Measuring twice because going back meant another entry fee. The CRX slowly started turning into something new. Not fast or pretty, but it was real. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, Manny learned something really important. The conversion wasn't about just changing the gears, it was about getting him back on the road quickly. And with the money he got for the SI's hit and sale, Manny wanted a new CRX SI this time. He was after those better features, particularly the sunroof. So where does he go? That's right, back to Craigslist. This time though, deep in downtown LA, before it was trendy and gentrified. He finds one that catches his eye because the seller knew how to photograph it and make it look pretty. The guy wanted $3,500. So Manny hits him with the classic, "Oh man, the bank only let me pull out $2,800. And that's how the lowball era began for Manny. Today, that CRX still sits on function-informed suspension and an SIR wing, but it's mostly untouched. A survivor. And as I was talking to Manny, he's telling me about how crazy buying car parts has gotten. Looking back, the prices sound unreal. JDM front clips for $2,500, V16 swaps for the same price. What used to cost that now goes for double, sometimes more. But that was the era. That was the culture. Chasing that movie scene in SoCal where the weather and the skyline is always cinematic. It was all about late nights, risky meetups, refreshing listings, building dream cars one part at a time. And Manny's story is far from over. He's still building and buying Civics like it's his full-time job, and he has no plans of ever stopping. If you've ever chased a part across state at midnight or risked it all for a build that just felt right, this podcast is for you. If you've got your own chaotic Craigslist story or late night mission, I want to hear about it. And if you're not subscribed already, hit that button. There's plenty more stories coming because these stories deserve to be told. Until next time, stay driven, my friends.